And we're back for episode 31 of Pursuing the Perfect Pint podcast. But before we get into our discussion, Brent, around all the RMI podcasts and our reflections, as I look out feeling very warm here today, what's your usual weatherman update and market?
We couldn't go an episode without putting on my weatherman suit and such.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's been a weather market now, Danielle, for at least a month. The Not that Switzerland matters a lot, but the locals tell me that June in Switzerland was the hottest June in recorded history. So, and we are kind of in the middle of Europe, so I guess you could put it in context from that side that that heat has spread across, of course, most of Europe. You feel it in the UK. It wasn't so bad when we were in Denmark and Sweden recently, but it was still, I think, even then warmer than usual. So yeah, it's a weather market. It's probably not having a huge impact on barley, a little bit on spring barley, probably more of an issue on wheat and certainly the corn crop in Europe, and that will have a secondary influence on barley prices, which has already shown up. So we've seen a little bit of an increase in barley prices, moderate, I would say, and it's kind of leveled off. People waiting to see the final results of harvest in the next 4 weeks or so. So weather hot and dry, and that's not a great finish to the crop. So we'll see some minor change. It'll impact yield a little bit and maybe sizing of the barley kernels, but yeah, not a great finish to the crop cycle.
And there would be a very poor end to the crop cycle if it then ends with rains in 4 weeks' time.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Again, the forecast here in very early July is pretty dry on the
Yeah.
horizon. So I think the situation looks like more of a continuation of what we have. So that's probably safe in the sense that, yeah, to your point, Daniel, we don't need rain at this stage. That could be even a bigger impact. So the other part of weather, which when we talk about it, is does it help beer volumes? And I guess some would say it was even too hot in the past few weeks. Like when the heat's excessive, people
Yeah. I
just
mean,
go.
you've seen in France some of the mairies shutting down the sale of alcohol because it's too hot, pubs closing down, things like that. So I think us humans seem to be very delicate. We only like to drink between certain temperatures.
Yeah,
It's too hot
20,
or too cold.
yeah, 28 degrees, a little bit of cloud cover and a slight breeze, and then you'll enjoy a
Yes.
pints possibly. But the other thing, and I've posted it a bit on LinkedIn lately, is what's the impact of the FIFA World Cup? Because depending on which nations are still in the title chase, and
Yep.
I've been putting some stuff out around per capita consumption these games in where you are, Danielle. Each England match is well, it's worth potentially 4 to 5 million additional pints of beer when the right teams get through. So UK beer sales should be up because now the English team
Yes.
is continuing to move forward. So that's one of the positive benefits to weather is people enjoying the refreshment of beer, which is probably one of beer's biggest inherent benefits is refreshment.
Yeah, and that sort of celebratory, events with friends and things like that. Brent, as we now head into episode 31, I think we took the opportunity to look back over the first 30 episodes. But for anyone listening the first time, why is RMI talking about podcasts and what's happening in the supply chain? So I thought, what is it about you, Brent, and what made you delve into podcasts? And, what else does RMI get up to?
Yeah. Well, I guess in one way, Daniel, it seems like a natural maturation in a way. RMI has been focused on two things really: providing insights to our client base. We do that on a monthly basis, and gathering information from around the world and bringing that into and condensing it. I guess that's where I apply my experience to kind of filter that story down to what's really important, and we publish those insights, and that's one way that we interact with all our clients. The second big thing we do is events, so we bring a lot of the supply chain together, either our global conference, which you've been a part of now for the last three, and you've attended other ones in the past, as I have. So Lisbon was my 10th RMI. So I think bringing that my experience together with help from people like yourself and others, of course, then we get venues selected, but more importantly, get the right agenda, get the right speakers in place to talk about the really most relevant topics that really need to be discussed. And we are independent in that way. So our main goal is just to bring the industry along and have important discussions because they need to take place. And I think that's a little bit of RMI's role as Yvonne at Board Malt said several years ago, which still sticks to my mind. In a way, RMI is an institution in the malt
Yeah.
supply chain. So I think there's some responsibility with that, and I'm happy to do it. So the answer to your question lies in the podcast. Just seemed like one more way to bring some of those insights to life, and more importantly, all these stories of the great things people are doing around the world. The industry does tend to be a bit shy, in my opinion, and not boastful. I'm not saying that we want them to be boastful, but at some point you do have to talk about the things you're doing because they are important, and they're in many cases, of course, they're very good efforts that are being put forth. So you have to toot your own horn sometimes, and I see the podcast as one way we can help people talk proudly about the things they're doing.
Absolutely. And I think it was very interesting for me as well while we were touring around Sweden and Denmark, how the farmers wanted copies of your insights, Brent. And I think there's also, it's difficult for people maybe to get that really global and deep dive regional perspective that you can provide. If you're a single farm or a small maltings, to be able to have that, one stop shop for those supply chain insights, I think is quite valuable.
Yeah, we learn in some way, maybe on a week to week or a monthly basis, maybe they wouldn't, there'd be too much information. But I
Yeah.
think what you're saying, yeah, we should, and we'll keep thinking, how can we make it kind of fit for purpose? So what can we do to give people a chance to stay up to date, but at the frequency that kind of fits them? So from an insights, I think we'll continue to see what we can do to share those as widely as we can. And in exchange for that, we hear back these stories and bring them to life through the podcast. So it kind of works both ways. We're learning about what's going on. We're sharing that, and people in reverse learn something from the rest of our travel. So yeah, we have some really good discussions with people because what's going on in Australia probably isn't so aware to a farmer in Sweden or a farmer in
Yeah.
Denmark. So we can help bring some of that story back to them as we're collecting their stories. So it does work, I think, for both sides of the
I
equation.
agree. I agree completely. And on that note, Brent, let's hear about where you and I were talking about our reflections from the first 30 episodes as we sat in a Copenhagen airport hotel. This week, we're doing a reflection on the podcast that we've done so far. And if our brains are working correctly, because we're not as young as we used to be, Brent, trying to think what are the main insights that we've heard to point people in the right podcasts to go and re-listen to or listen to the first time on their way to work.
Yeah, so I think we thought we've been to circa 30 episodes and we've kind of circumvented the world, and
Yeah.
but in that journey we've heard some interesting things, which
Yeah.
was our intention. Maybe not everything we anticipated to hear, so we learned. So I guess anyone, if you want to go back and look at and listen to and watch some of these, I think there'd
Yeah.
be like we learned stuff definitely as we went through
Yes.
this. So I hope that other people, and the feedback's been quite good, that people
Yeah.
have it. So but I guess yeah, there's all of that. I guess the biggest thing for me is after 30 plus episodes, we've kind of affirmed what we expected is the stories that we come in contact with are interesting. We thought they were interesting, but people have kind of
Yeah.
confirmed that they are interesting. We can go through
Yeah.
lots of examples. So that's been good, and the feedback's been good. We always try to improve.
Yeah.
But I guess if I had to summarize it, we've kind of approach this in the way that people see it's interesting. So,
Yeah.
and we can always improve it, as I say. But I think there's something there that there are some interesting stories, and we're delivering those. So that's a win.
I mean, if I have to start at the beginning of the supply chain, well, with the breeders, I think we've had some interesting breeder conversations with both, Lima Grain and, Intergrain, AGT, etc. And I think if you think that barley costs now what it did, 20 years ago,
Yeah,
has
probably not.
moved.
Probably not.
So with all those yield improvements, not just breeding related, but I think we can say for sure the breeders are doing a good job, and there's some great podcasts to listen to on the
Yeah,
breeding
there's
side.
at least 3 examples, and there'll be more to come. I guess the takeaway would be disease resistance and probably climate
Yeah,
resistance.
climate
I think
resistance. Yeah.
the idea that we have what I always call the pipeline of new varieties are good because they're more
Yeah.
resilient against disease and climate. Farmers need that because because they can grow other crops. So we heard from those people you mentioned. Very good story that we've got a very healthy pipeline, as I called it, and that gives us some comfort that going forward we can feel quite good about that part of it, because
Continuing.
farmers see benefit, maltsters see benefit, and of course brewers and distillers will benefit from that in time. So that part tells us we're in a pretty healthy
Yeah.
spot. So that should be of interest to everyone that likes beer or whiskey.
Yeah.
That you can think that the industry is really doing a lot to get to that space.
Brent, if we then, I think the phrase that you and I keep using as we've been listening to this podcast is the fabulous reflection on industry by Casper. And what is the phrase?
You can't put hope on the P&L.
Boom. And I think we've used that a lot.
And we will. Yeah, it's one of those things that's like great phrases across time. That's one that you just say, we thought hope is a strategy. No, it's not a strategy, and you can't put it on the P&L, which was great that Casper said it. The industry is in pretty tough shape. If you think farmers would tell you that it's not great. Maltsters, of course, as well. So 3 years of volume decline in brewing and a big whiskey reset. All these things are more than headwinds, I guess I would say. But the industry is very resilient. We talked about resiliency in Lisbon. We did an episode around some reflections live from Lisbon. It's almost amazing that people stay as positive and show that resiliency, because you could just say, check out, like,
give it up,
I've had enough of this, but that's not what you see from the industry. So that's a big plus for a big feather in the cap of people in the industry.
And I think anyone who wants to go listen to the podcast by Fuglsang, I really enjoyed that, because I think as a family brewer, maltster, I mean, they're like, we've been there, done that, got the T-shirt, seen these cycles. Our job is to stay cool, calm, and collected, and see it through this current cycle.
Yeah, so I think they've been tested, right?
They have been tested.
The length of this downturn has been more than most people thought, but that resiliency still pulls through. So our friends at Fuglsang would be one of them, and others. Like it's across the board, and so. But we also got into what we're hearing from brewers.
Yep.
And that's been challenging. The one that sticks to my mind is one of them, at least of many. We talked to the brewer in Patagonia in Argentina, and talking to say a craft brewer. And in the course of that discussion, he was giving us all this data around, they were looking at every invoice that they generated in their pub restaurant, and he knew that they were charging 0.75 beers per bill. At the moment, it was 2.75 2 years ago or whatever. So
that's a huge change.
Yeah, and he didn't know all the reasons for it, but he knew what the result was.
Yeah,
and that was from a data perspective. That was amazing. That he was trying to figure it out, and maybe they have to think about what they offer, beer styles or things, food pairings or whatever. But he knew he had a problem. He knew it in detail, and he's working on the solutions.
I mean, the other interesting podcast I think was the Crumbs Brewing. So I think they've achieved what you've been talking about, is how do you make malt the core of the story? They haven't done that. They've made it bread, naan bread, etc., making different beer styles linked to bread. But I think it's great to see that story coming from a waste product, and if we could do something similar with malt, I think that would be very interesting.
A great story, but little factoids, like you say, I didn't know the extent of bread that goes to waste every day. Like, totally, like that's just crazy, but it happens every day. And here's someone that comes along and says, well, I think I can reuse that bread, and I can actually spin a story around it. And a beer brand that's tied to rye bread or sourdough or whatever. Like, you have to think creatively to come to that conclusion, right? So those are the examples. We randomly come in contact with them and say that's a story that we think should be told.
Someone thinking creatively to solve a problem. And I think there's so many other headwinds. I think we've got the very interesting discussion you had with Matthias around changes in the whole sort of global barley supply chain, the impact of destination maltings and things like that. I think that's a great conversation for people to listen to.
There's other industries as well, but we always bring it back to our reality, and it's the industry is shifting into different places, building resiliency, like we talked about a lot in Lisbon. But it does change things, so then people have to adapt to those changes. So we see a lot of things changing. We have a lot of geopolitical influences. We've got Russia, Ukraine. We've had, maybe it's resolved, but we've had U.S., Iran, Middle East conflicts. We've had tariffs. Right. So we talk about beer declines and whiskey reset, but you throw geopolitical on top of that.
Just another layer.
I talk to everyone that will listen, we're through 6+ years of the most disruptive period of time that we'll ever experience in our careers /
Yeah.
lives. I hope, and
Hopefully more.
and
Yeah.
hope's not a strategy,
No.
but yeah, so wonderful stories, and I think that was back to my first point. The idea that you and I, we enjoy doing it,
Yeah.
and that's great. But it's more about the stories that we come in contact with through my activities. And as an example, we're doing this. We've been around Denmark the last couple
Yes.
days, and there's no end to the story. So that these are things that we'll share
Yeah.
with people, because in some ways you kind of have an idea of what the story is, but until you actually get face to
Absolutely.
face with people and stand in the field with a farmer and other stakeholders, it's nothing better than that.
Okay.
And how you bring those stories to life. It's a small role in a way for RMI
Yeah.
to do it, but maybe we're in the small advantageous position that through the course of what we think is important to do, we
Yeah.
come in contact with those stories. And the more recently, if someone the energy market has in the last couple of months been a massive disruption,
Yeah.
right? And we talked to our friend Katrian from
Yes.
Power Pulse,
Yeah.
and she just, in her own very magical way, she just lays it down in a few short sentences,
Yeah.
and in the course of doing that, you just get informed on things to a level
Yeah.
that is just kind of simple and easy, but
Yeah.
very enlightening.
And also how connected it all is. So I'm going to put you on the spot now, Brent. Your top 3 podcasts, if you think people should go and have a listen, what would you pick? Not for, good or bad, but just from an interesting sort of insight perspective.
Well, that's a good question. Well, more it's maybe recency bias, and it's very topical. But Katrine's comment on
Yeah.
what's going on in energy, and not just a market update, but an idea that what's fundamentally shifting, like
In the whole
the
energy market. Yeah.
China focused on long range. They're shipping out batteries and
Yeah.
solar panels and EVs, and the U.S. is sending out
Yeah.
raw energy. Like this is something people can take away and take home and think about
Yeah.
what's their business about.
Yeah.
So that's a more recent one. Casper will always hold a spot because we had such a good conversation. We know
Yes.
each other quite well, and just because it's such a natural, all of a sudden something's mentioned about hope's not a strategy. So those sort of things will
Yeah.
stick in my mind. Those are probably the two that I come to are good. Probably without anyone specific. I use it every week, basically. I talk to people that I've met through
Yeah.
I say, sad to say, in my 30 years of industry
30
participation.
years, 30 podcasts. There you are.
30, here we go, yeah. And has the great fortune to meet a lot of great people, and in connecting with those people is part of
Yeah.
how we get to these stories, or those people connect us with someone else,
Yeah.
and the scope just keeps to expand. But just talking to those people, I enjoy it. So it's
Yeah.
actually quite nice. So we touch South America, Australia, across Europe, North America, so that's one layer. The other layer is that's the geographic layer. The other is we cover topics like you started with,
Yeah.
developing new barley varieties that are planted by farmers, and we talk to farmers,
Yeah.
and we talk to maltsters, and we talk to brewers, and we've actually had a couple
Yeah.
distillers, or one distiller in particular in Australia. So we kind of put the whole supply chain out there, and we're only scratching the surface
Yeah.
of the stories that could be told. So rinse and repeat in one way, but they'll all be different, and that's
Yeah.
probably the best thing about the spending the time on it. So it's expanding the network a little bit,
Yeah.
which is fun, but it you do it with an idea that you're keeping informed, and you learn something. I learn something from
Oh,
every
100%.
conversation. Yeah.
100%. So I think anyone who's listening, I think, should go look through the podcast list and see what grabs their fancy. I think there's so many good ones, and I think it's always interesting to see the balance between the short-term cost pressures and the long-term thinking that everybody has, and it makes for some very
Yeah,
interesting listening.
resiliency, like we talked about.
Yeah, absolutely.
The one, if we and I think we'll change this. We talked about it. We've asked people at the end of the podcast, what's your favorite occasion or beer style? One theme that has come out, I think, universally is it's almost all about occasions.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, which we knew, kind
Yeah.
of, we knew. It's not about I like this style of beer
Yeah.
or that
Yeah.
style of beer. It's like in almost all cases, the sharing of a beer and the social aspect of beer is what almost everyone comes back to that. Which we, as I say, we kind of knew
Yeah.
that, but when you just ask random people that same question, they all talk about the same thing.
Yep.
Which I think gives us some hope that don't give up on beer.
Yeah.
It's been social for
A long time.
centuries.
Yeah.
I think it will be. It's changing, of course, and figuring out consumers patterns and so on is difficult. But don't bet against the consumer from the standpoint of we are social animals, and we heard that from Sam and from Sharon, and we're going to repeat some of that because it's a really powerful message. So I think we don't give up on beer. Maybe would be another.
Don't give up on beer. There you are.
theme.
I like that.
So
excellent. And here's Brent to at least another 30 episodes in the future, and really having looked at the agenda, loads of exciting content coming up.
Yep. Well, here's to the next 30. And as we keep mentioning, we'll always continue to make small improvements just so people get, something out of it.
Cheers.
Cheers.